Guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and thank you very much for making some time out of your day to check the video out. Today I'm going to show you guys my favorite 60-year-old lure that I still use as much today as I ever have. Caught thousands and thousands of bass on it, and the month of March and April is the best time to use this lure, so I'm going to give you guys tips and advice on how to catch some good fish on it. Real quick guys, just wanted to invite anybody's interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, just shoot me a private message on my Facebook page, Randy Blockett Professional Angler, and I'll give you all the details on that. And also, we're gunning real hard to hit that 100,000 subscriber mark. We're about 2,000 short. Got a big giveaway when it comes up. So I appreciate everybody's support. If you guys like the channel here, just hit that subscribe button. Much appreciated. Okay, guys, let's talk about it. My sentimental, all-time old favorite, probably the lure that I caught more bass on when I started fishing than anything. The lure that sort of like, got my interest in fishing up, and that's the old rapala minnow, guys. You can see here this veteran, how much it's been used here. I've caught so many fish just on this one right here. But guys, anyone that has bass fished for any time knows about the rapala minnow. They know what it is, but it doesn't get used like it used to. It's like back when I started fishing back in the 70s, this was the staple right here, man. This was the staple lure that was like one of the original jerk baits. This was not ever considered a jerk bait per se, like we think in terms of suspending jerk baits, because it's balsa and it floats up like a cork. But there's an application for the rapala minnow that is specifically suited for March and April, so we're going to get into that. So first of all, the rapala minnow, there's two different ways that you can fish it. You can fish it as a surface lure, or you can fish it fast like a traditional jerk bait. And I've done really good on both. I almost won the Bassmaster Invitational Tournament on Lake Gunnersville in 1987. Rick Clunn won that tournament, and I finished 7th. But I lost 2 fish in that tournament. I would have won that tournament over Clunn. Every fish I caught came on this exact rapala here. This is the exact one I used in that tournament. You can see here, every single fish, and I was jerking it hard like a jerk bait over some shallow submerged grass, just like boom, 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 keeping it underwater all the time. But I also have made several top 10s on this particular lure, fishing it on the surface. I made a top 10 in the FLW at Lake Pascagoula, twitching it on the surface, just twitching it underwater, letting it float to the surface. And I made a top 10 at the was the Harris Chain, or no, a top 10 at the I can't remember if it was one of the Florida lakes. I can't remember if it was the Lake Toho or St. Johns River, but anyway, both of those, it's where I was fishing them subsurface, letting them float to the surface, and they're biting them off the surface like a topwater. So we're going to talk a little bit about that application. And before I get into that, I got to put Sage up. She just ran out of the yard here. Just one second. Sorry about that, guys. Got Sage taken care of here. So anyway, what I was going to say, that's the two primary ways that you work the rapala. It's on top, like a surface lure, and just underneath on the bottom. Now, a couple of different things. One of the big keys with this bait in the springtime of the year is you got to have the right conditions for it. And I fished this thing for so many years, I can tell you exactly when you want to pick it up and when you want to put it down. The number one condition for this particular bait is when you have a sort of like an overcast sky and very light winds. Ideally, I like it, well, there are two different things. If I'm fishing it as a surface lure on the top, I like it to be calm, like no wind at all, because what happens is this is so subtle and it's so quiet, is I'll throw it out there and I'll just sort of twitch it under the surface. It'll maybe go under the surface like an inch, and I let it float to the surface, and then I'll just like barely twitch it like that, and I keep it on the surface. And since this is a completely silent bait, having calm conditions, the fish can track this better and they can see it from a distance away. Ideally, I like to have at least 2.5 to 3 foot of visibility. It works really good if you have some type of shallow grass. That's why this thing excels, like in Florida, any type of grass lake that you have. But you don't necessarily have to have grass, but you do have to have fairly clean water, and you have to have overcast conditions and calm conditions. That's when it's going to be the best. Now, if you're jerking it under the water, it doesn't have to be quite that specific. You can have a little bit more of a breeze. You can even have a partly cloudy sky conditions, and you can have a little bit even more off-colored water. I mean, that tournament at Gunnersville that I almost won on it, we had probably, I'm going to guess, a foot and a half of visibility. So when you're jerking it underwater, it's more of like a traditional jerk bait. The times that you do not want to use this, guys, is anytime like after a cold front. After a cold front comes through and you have a north wind, you can forget about the bite on top water. It just completely goes away. Not quite so much as you're jerking it under the surface, but ideally, guys, the best days I've had on this thing is when I work it like a topwater lure, just jerking it down, letting it float, keeping it on the surface like that. And big fish will hit it. I mean, you can catch giants on this thing. And it's when you're fishing it on topwater like that, I can't stress the conditions. I'll give you guys a prime example. I was fishing, it was a Bassmaster, it was a Bassmaster tournament. It's been probably 15, 20 years ago down at Lake Okeechobee. And the day before the tournament, we had one of those days like I was talking about. It was calm, overcast, sort of warm, not much wind at all, just pretty calm. Guys, you can't believe the day I could have had on that. I had the hooks cut off on this thing, and I probably had 40 or 50 good ones. I'm talking about anywhere between 2 to 8 pounders that would come up and just like suck this thing, and they go, it was just, I could not wait. I mean, it was like I found this one little backwater, and it was alive with fish, and this is the bait they wanted, the rapala. The next day of the tournament, of course, a cold front comes in overnight. We had 20-mile-an-hour north winds, bluebird skies. I never got a bite on the rapala in that same area that, I had ripped them in before. They just completely turned off of it. So the rapala and a floating worm, guys, I'll give you some tips here. A floating worm and a rapala on the surface, you might as well put them back in your box after a front goes through. They just don't work that good. So let's talk a little bit about equipment now. You throw this on a spinning rod all the time. I usually throw it, if I'm jerking it underwater, I'll use 8-pound test Seaguard and VizX fluorocarbon on a spinning rod. If I'm fishing it on the surface, I'm usually using 8-pound test monofilament so it doesn't sink down. And just making long casts with it, just working it halfway back to the boat. Most of the time they're going to hit it where your bait is over the prime piece of cover. Now that cover or depth can be critical. Sometimes they're going to hit it right off the bat against the boat, against the bank. Sometimes like if you're fishing it over a shallow grass flat, it could be halfway back to the boat. But guys, it is a killer, man, and we're getting right up on top of the time for it. There's 2 primary colors. It's the blackback silver side and there's blackback gold side. Most 90% of the time, this is the one I use. I just caught so many fish on it. I got a lot of confidence in it. But guys, it's worth it, man. It's worth it to keep these in your box under the right situations. It's one of those deals where, not many people fish it, and it produces big ones. That's all I can say about it. It produces big ones this time of year. So hope you guys can use it in your arsenal coming up this spring, and I'll check in with y'all later.